Welcome back to episode 2 of 0 Basis Points with your host, Haik Sahakyan, and my co-host, George Guidotti. George, how's it going, man?
Good to be back, man. So soon, but love talking to you. So excited to get right back into the weeds of everything WealthTech. Very exciting week, and a lot of cool stuff to talk about today. So I'm glad you could carve out some time to do this.
Yeah, I think there's a lot going on right now in the WealthTech space, whether it's people shutting down software, which we'll get into, or just newer stuff popping up and the market getting a little zesty, in my opinion. So
right. Yeah, I guess for anyone following this podcast, we did a podcast a day ago, and one of the cool things that we want to do with 0 Basis Points is be able to knock out podcasts quickly, so you don't have to wait until a conference or a webinar to find out what's going on. So you can always just chime in here. We want to be able to deliver quickly. So just jumping right into it, Haik, and recapping some of the things we talked about yesterday. Just let's bring a little context back to 0 Basis Points. We've come from, we have a great background. We have a lot of places we want to go, and we'll get into that. But where you are today, you're the CEO of a company called Arca. Could you just kind of tell everybody what Arca is and what makes you different than other AI solutions out there?
Yeah, definitely. So Arca, you probably got introduced to Arca back when we met in T3, and
right.
So much has been shipped since then. What I realized and where my experience kind of led me is that there were a lot of AI solutions I was seeing pop up in the market. We were already doing kind of the schematics and the architecture for a software that folks can put in their alts, can kind of do holistic reporting, aggregate their assets into one place. When AI started coming out and started getting into the mainstream, we realized that there was real leverage and power in what we could do with the AI on top of the data we had. So we don't force clients to go and buy our tool and say, hey, it's this or nothing else. We almost are an AI overlay on top of existing software, whether it's a data lake that someone has, whether it's data sitting in another product like an Orion or an Addepar. They could essentially leverage the most recent LLMs out there to look at insights, analytics, and data monitoring for their portfolio data. And the reason we went into it is because there aren't a lot of folks who are addressing portfolio data and AI, the cross-section of that. Mostly where they're specializing is around CRMs and note-taking, which we know how big that market is. And then the other side is on the investing and retail side. So it's I'll be your AI advisor for, someone who has a couple $100,000 and they'll give you some allocation with modern portfolio theory. But no one's really building AI tools specifically for the advisor doing stuff with client portfolio data. That's why we got into this market, and that's where we started building Arca.
Right. That's a major thing, because I talk up Arca a lot, and I understand conceptually what the product's doing. I've logged into the platform, so I've kicked the tires. For a lot of advisors that don't understand maybe what Haik was just saying, I think the best parallel, and correct me if I'm wrong, Haik, is everybody understands the idea of a Salesforce overlay. Like Salesforce does this CRM thing. It's really cool, but it's for every industry on the planet. We want to isolate, the Salesforce experience to financial services, and there are overlays in our space. There's 5 or 6 of them, probably more. So what you're saying is you can bring AI into whatever the RIA or financial institution ecosystem may be, lay the AI on top of it and let it do its thing.
Correct. And I think that's the real advantage of something like Arca, right? And being at iPipeline, you're going into a lot of deals where folks have technology that they're already working with. It's almost too conflicting to come in and say, we have to overhaul everything. Yeah, when you're starting from scratch, you can kind of decide what your tech stack looks like and pick the best in breed and the newest stuff. But realistically, a lot of the firms that we're interfacing with already have something in place. And we need to work with that. And how do you do that, right? And I think that's where your experience has been. So kind of give me a little high level kind of day in the life of George at iPipeline and what you're dealing with and helping clients solve.
I will. What's a funny thing that you reminded me to, back in 2008, when I was holding a baby, like I said, and with a pacifier in his mouth to keep him from crying, I was cold calling advisors like at the beginning of the crisis. And one of the advisors I'll never forget, because, it was like terrifying cold calling days. But he said, George, like every other advisor in the space, we're trying to figure out how to use what we have. And I think that's where like everybody made so many investments. It's like, can we use AI with what we have? Like the last thing we want to do is change this or that. And you said another thing that I thought was really cool was like you've been shipping product. And I meant to mention that because CRM's my baby. Like I think I know more about CRM than anybody on the planet. As far as wealth management goes, Brian McLaughlin might argue with that, but we can go one-on-one somewhere out there on the circuit one day to see about that. But I remember I saw a release that I reached right out to you. I'm like, dude, you guys are doing CRM. That's a big deal, because as a CRM vendor, I was always a little bit paranoid about the fact that, like an advisor could figure out how to run the practice without this, like it's like they could use Excel, they could use their contact and just update notes in Outlook. Like there was all these workarounds to it. But then they realized like if they needed to scale and integrate with other solutions, they need to like a bespoke or a purpose-built CRM for financial services. So now that you're doing that, it seems like, no, it doesn't seem like it. CRM loyalty is out the window in wealth management. Orion bought Redtail. Brian McLaughlin isn't there anymore. There's all the things that we were doing, like, because we were friends 10 years ago, is like everybody has sold their company now, and there isn't that loyalty there anymore because the people aren't there anymore. So I'm excited to see Arca doing that. I think that's because no matter what, in any system that you use, you're going to be creating a person likely, or searching for a person, loading that person, and then usually you want to write a note or do something.
Yeah, and householding primarily around those folks. And I think that's the real, where at least I've been from the days of Addepar and kind of post Addepar. It's like you can boil down CRM, and it's very interpretive of like what that really is per firm, right? Everyone kind of imagines it the same way, but a different way. But realistically, you create a person, household, legal entities, the assets, how they roll up. And as long as there's truth in that formula, and you can kind of get a real holistic picture of who owns what when, as of a point in time, and there's this multi-temporal kind of model that you can historically run it, etc., and capture all the changes, you're already a ways there to getting a full CRM kind of structure built. Then at that point, it's the simple stuff, like you said. How do I just drop a note to say, hey, I need to send George something, an update, or I need to do this? I love the examples you always give where an advisor wakes up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat, and it's something that they saw that they need to do. How do they get that and translate it into their system? Are they going to go get their key fob 2-factor auth and put it into their laptop, in their office in the basement? Not really. What they're going to want to do is pick up a phone, just update it really quickly, and then have that note be there when they wake up and they get to the office. And I think that's really where we want to leverage Arca's CRM capabilities to go after that, to do those edge cases that not a lot of people are thinking about, but is out there.
Right. Yeah, I wake up in the middle of the night. I say, let's say I'm your advisor and you're my client. I'm like, oh my God, like I'm just going to, oh my gosh, I should say, remind me in the morning when I load my CRM and I'm to call Haik and sell all positions in XYZ or whatever it might be to look into this particular task. And I always say with like CRM, I'm like, all advisors want now, like they don't want these like crazy workflows with 10 steps that they're not going to do anyway. They already have 500 steps in their CRM that they're never going to get to anyway. And they're just like, they wish they could just delete them all in mass. It's like, can I just write a note and create a yellow sticky, and I'm that old school, and then just put it on my monitor so that the next time I look at my computer, this is like the first thing that I take care of. And so it's like, I can't slap it on the monitor because that's not secure. So when I load the contact in the CRM, just make it super obvious that I've got to like take care of this first. Like, man, have we let down the advisors? To just make it that simple. Yeah. And instead we're coming up with these massive workflow processes and all these things. So I just think it's really cool that you're doing CRM, and even you said householding, because as an overlay, you know, everybody, whether it's a family or a household, like we've got to think of a client in the context of their family. Very rarely do you just have the one like guy with $10 million and he's like single. So, you know, it's the family, and especially now as we want to cross, like advisors lose clients as they try to bridge generation. It's just, you know, we want to minimize that. But yeah, that's like great, amazing strides, you know, with ARCA this year. And another thing, like tell me just like, and everybody, like the NASDAQ news this week, major news.
No, I had a meeting earlier today, and someone was like, "Hey, I saw this." So it's kind of made its waves on LinkedIn, and obviously we post on X too. So yeah, NASDAQ, that was kind of a surprise. They have this fintech trailblazer contest that they're doing, and we've partnered with NASDAQ from a data side, so we got an introduction into and have gotten exposure into the rest of their org, where they are looking at startups, they are looking at a lot of the technology in the space. As you know, NASDAQ did purchase, they do have a portfolio of like performance reporting systems and things like that out there. Solovis was one back in the day that happened that I was close to. And so I think they're kind of trying to get a little more into the fintech world. And so they've started ways to essentially interact with companies, ours being one of them, from the data side. And so when we showed them kind of what we were doing and how we visualized the future of wealth management and wealth tech, they were super excited. And that's where we kind of got into the finalist shortlist for the FinTech Trailblazer competition. So hopefully we can win.
That's
we'll
awesome.
See how that pans out.
It's awesome. Like when I saw the picture, like with the NASDAQ building.
Yeah.
Funny story. When I was still in college, like I went to University of Scranton. It's in Northeastern PA, but a lot of people from New York going to that school. So I was interviewing with NASDAQ while I was still in school to work in the NASDAQ like production studio. So when they were giving market news, like you would change like which TV would show up in the background, and I didn't get the job.
Now you get to do it on the podcast.
But I was in there. The guy was running me around the building. I'm like, I'm in. I want to get this job. Like I'm moving to New York. You know, that job didn't pan out. But it always works out. But yeah, that was great news for you guys. Though. That's awesome.
It's exciting. I mean, it's great to see ARCA's just branding up on the tower. Even for a couple of seconds, I'm sure they had it up in the morning, and it's exciting. And they have a great team over there. So shout out to NASDAQ for being awesome. Especially for believing in wealth tech. I think they're going to be a pretty big player in that space. And I know they're doing some stuff with some wealth managers and aggregators too. So I think they're trying to get a footprint there. But yeah, I was going to say, George, what's kind of back to a day in the life of George at iPipeline? I mean, give us a little, it's a little obviously more mature company than ARCA. So there's different ways of you guys doing stuff and different products and suite of products that you have and clients you kind of work with. Your role at Event, we interface there. We work together pretty in depth and kind of getting the micro app up on the Event platform for ARCA, and that's opened up a lot of doors. But now a slightly different role at iPipeline. So kind of give me the 30,000 feet.
Yeah, and I want to explain iPipeline in a way that the wealth management space is going to learn what iPipeline does. Is iPipeline is one of the most if not the most well-capitalized player in the wealth management space that isn't publicly traded. So a massive organization, but not so massive, around 900 people. But if you think about everything that we're doing in wealth management, we are managing, let's say, pools of wealth, a massive or many pools of wealth, and doing our best so that pool of wealth grows to secure the financial future of our clients. On the other side of securing financial futures, we have insurance and annuities. I'm married. I have my own household. I have 3 kids, so I have my pool of assets, and I have insurance products. But they're like 2 different like people that I talk to, and that's how the industries behave, because we have a fee-based RIA wealth management space, and we have a commission-driven insurance space. And then now it's like, well, how creative can we get with the 2 spaces to bring them together to say that this is a fee-based annuity. We aren't getting the upfront commission, but we're getting ongoing fees associated. And in ways you could do that in the past anyway, after like a certain amount of time it expired after the annuity sale. But what iPipeline is incredible at doing is everything related to insurance. Like the way that we dream the wealth management space would work, they're doing in the insurance side already. Like, oh man, I wish it was just easy to it takes forever to open up an account, at a couple different custodians. It's cumbersome, and there are different workflows to getting that done. And even once I open the account, I've got to jump into the custodian to fund the account, and it's really a wobbly process. What iPipeline's doing end to end is, when we log into their solutions, whether we're logging in directly or using it as a headless solution, and they have a lot of solutions, but primarily think of facilitating the delivery of the insurance from the inception. Like, I think this client would be well suited for a product. It might be the most suitable thing for them, whether it's an annuity or an insurance product. I'd love to show them some illustrations of what these options look like. Once they choose that, I want to start the process of getting the annuity in force so that if something happens, I just want the policy to be in force. So that time, if I wanted to buy an insurance policy today, it could take, 90 days. So what iPipeline wants to do is bring that down to days. And so it's all about expediting and accelerating and, speeding up the process of connecting investors and policies. So fundamentally, that's what they're doing. Then on the products, so they've got the products that support that, but they've also have a ton of products that solve like wealth management's largest problems, like for growing RIAs, like how do we consume massive amounts of data and process it onto a group of forms and then get all of those things signed? Or how can we open up a new account inside of our platform at Pershing or NFS or whatever, custodian? So we have a lot of workflows that the wealth management space really doesn't know about. And so I'm here to make all the noise I possibly can to let the RIAs know that like we've got some really cool tools. Everybody knows about Laser App, which is one of the companies that iPipeline's local to me. I knew about them. I actually have some. So I've known about them for a long time. Incredibly successful local organization, but they bought Laser App, who was my first integration partner when I owned Grendel, a CRM I started, back in the day. So yeah, that's what we're doing today. And, we're, hosting conferences, and, doing, a lot to get the name out there from a marketing perspective, this year. But yeah, it's fun to talk to RIAs about what we're doing at iPipeline, because I think at first we're like, I don't know. And then halfway through, it's like, wow, this is cool. So yeah, it's cool. It's been a great fit for me. I mean, either way, I'm working with people that are trying to figure out how to secure the future for investors. And like, that's a big thing. It's the only thing I know now. So, that's what's cracking. And, so, I still spend my days talking to really any size RIA, in the wealth management space.
That's awesome.
So
I think, you're a wealth of knowledge, like I said in episode 1, just given your experience and having gone through the exit with Grendel. And I have yet talked to someone that you don't know, at least in this space. So it's such and I was talking to someone earlier today, it's such an incestuous space in the wealth market, because everyone's hopping around, everyone knows each other. I mean, the conferences are almost kind of like family reunions for some of these folks, and they're seeing all their friends. And when we came to our first conference, we just didn't know what to expect. But, now going back to T3, which is next week or so, it's like you're going to see the same folks that we saw in Vegas the year prior.
It's Joel's party. It's Joel's party to celebrate WealthTech with all Joel's homies. And it's like your best friends get to come up on stage and, no, it's fun. It's the hottest conference in WealthTech. And Joel's like, fintechy, man. He's like the true OG in the space. So, I'll mention it, a new OG on every single time we talk, but he's one that you can't, T3. I remember my first T3, it was in Torrey Pines. I mean, it was probably like 17 years ago. I snuck in my plasma TV. Everybody's still sneaking TVs in, but I remember I was like sneaking it down the hall thinking I was going to get like arrested. But now everybody's buying and returning their big flat screens. I wonder when these big stores are going to catch on to it, but maybe they don't care. I don't know.
Well, I know some people like raffle them off too, and then
Yeah, just
everyone
give them
else.
to the Uber driver. Hey,
Yeah,
if you drive me to pick up the TV, you can I'll give you a ring to come and pick it up. It's
yeah.
cheaper than renting it
Well,
from
yeah.
Freeman.
You're gonna fly so much of the stuff and the setup, and that's why when we came on, like luckily not, those things were already set up where a lot of these companies were doing it, the event coordinators for us. So it's like send us your logo, we'll have it up. But obviously, if back in the day, bring your own, put it up, figure out how your marketing is going to be. Now it's a little more universal and unified. So at
Right.
least that, that's progressed. But speaking of kind of the industry conferences and stuff, I expect to hear a lot about two things, probably at T3 this year. One of them being the Morningstar
Huge.
Office to
Yes.
Black Diamond kind of transition. And I saw that. I didn't expect it. We've talked to Morningstar before. There was really nothing that I could tell that this was going to happen, but wanted to kind of lean on you and your experience. You've been through so many of these products being sunsetted, products being sold. I've seen only two so far that kind of have raised, a little interest and piqued my interest, and they've been this year. It was primarily Orion's acquisition of Summit, and then this one. So speaking of the most current one, I mean, what are your thoughts on that? It's kind of crazy. Who's going after that?
Blood in the water. It's like what I
Yeah.
think. It's if I was competing exclusively in the CRM space back in the day, and like you're like, oh, like Redtail is gonna close down, and be like, oh my god, I would change our website to be like, we do Redtail conversions and
Yeah.
free data conversions overnight. We'll run them twice. Um, so it'll be interesting. It's like when TD Ameritrade Institutional was acquired by Schwab. You're like, man, how many RIAs are they going to keep? I wonder what the retention rate was there.
I think it was pretty high,
Right.
surprisingly.
I think it was too, because there's so much pain, but and you can be an expert at data conversions. Like the biggest, I've probably orchestrated, and if I'm being conservative, 2,000 data conversions, where I've spoken with a firm about how you're going to stop using your software, or you're going to give a copy and then continue using your software. We're going to time it so there's no really maybe one day of downtime without a CRM. But getting that the historical data, like you can start using your performance right away, but it doesn't look cool with like extended lines until you get that history. So I think every one of those firms, it'll be interesting. I don't think that the retention rate will be as high as it was for Schwab. And I know that's kind of a random parallel example, but if you have like Orion is nasty fast at onboarding firms. Like, TD Ameritrade, speaking of like TD Ameritrade, back in the day, they used to just be like, just go, if your assets are a TD, just use Orion. And, they would just feed Orion clients. So, I think that I was like, I think, Black Diamond, first place, Orion, second place, Advison, third place, and then Blue Leaf and Panoramics duking it out, for the final two spots. And I'd love for somebody to tell me like where I'm wrong there. But I think any of these RAs would be like, time to have a meeting, like,
Well, yeah,
how's the performance been? Like, do
yeah,
we like this? Like, this is the time to have a discussion about it. And all these companies are going to it's an exciting time to be selling performance.
yeah.
Put
I
it that
don't.
way.
I think anytime there's a shakeup this big with the technology side of it, firms are gonna look. So there's definitely gonna be, regardless of what Morningstar is kind of dealing with Black Diamond for, firms are gonna look elsewhere as well, right? Because does it fit our needs? What are the concessions we're gonna get if we do this versus what's out there in the market? Who are we looking at? And I've done my fair share of conversions to know that that's going to be a big issue. Obviously, I'm sure maybe they prep. There's a lot of tooling, but my kind of claim to fame for conversions was taking a single family office who was very large and in size as well as data, from APX over to Addepar, with full transactions converted back to the 80s for their alternative privates and back to 91 for all their publics, with tax lots reconciled, all the way through current date, because they were gifting those lots and they needed essentially performance to tie out. So
My head is
I,
spinning.
I mean, yeah, it's just like it's crazy. Like a lot of it, and even now we do a bunch of conversions for clients leveraging AI for it coming into Arca, because luckily we can read the data faster. We can do a lot of that stuff that we manually had to. But I think there's it's gonna be very interesting. I don't think there's any numbers around retention, the number of firms that are leaving Morningstar or will be leaving Morningstar's office. So I'm looking at it and saying definitely it's playing field for a lot of these performance systems. It's just going to be interesting how far it goes down the line of the concessions, the discounts, who starts capturing what, and who really comes out on top of it. But
But you know what? I'd love to pick your brain if I can, just before
yeah,
I
of course.
forget, is because you're an Addepar guy. Like when I was at Invent, and Invent, is targeting, well, they work with larger firms. So let's just say 2 to 4 billion up to 100 billion in assets under management. So I was working with a lot of Addepar firms in that market and that AUM range. So when we talk about like who is in the race for these Morningstar firms, like we didn't even mention Addepar. And I think it's an obvious statement to say that's because that's so upmarket. That office, there's no way they would have been using Morningstar to run that family office. Is that just an obvious thing?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Got
It's
it.
just some of them have. I think here's where I always come in and I try to make this distinction across my clients as well as for folks in the market to easily know where Addepar plays really well and where certain clients kind of migrate towards there. It's really the asset makeup of their portfolios, and when they're primarily alternatives, Addepar came out in the market around 2012, 13 was they were building. So it's around 15, almost 15 years older or so. And one of their first biggest deals, I mean, it was around alts, trying to be able to model these alts. Where I was talking to clients who had APX and Axis, they had to unitize everything and they were doing workarounds to try to come up with a way to do a contribution and a capital call and a distribution correctly. Addepar came out and said, "Hey, these are value-based assets, dollars in, dollars out. This is all it's going to be to kind of get performance generated." So a lot of those larger firms who have an asset pool with a lot of alts and want to mix it along with their, publics, share-based stocks and things like that, and have a holistic picture, they're the ones who are a little more complex, and that's why Addepar is so kind of on the higher market side of those capabilities and reporting. And they spend so much money on the reporting module itself for their system that they do put out nice reports and things like that. So I've seen a very large kind of institutional RIAs, MFOs, things like that kind of migrate towards that front. Everyone else kind of on the Black
Right.
Diamond and Morningstar Office side.
Yeah. It was not surprising, but once I got to Invent and those were the firms we were targeting, it was like Addepar was like 60% of the discussions. It was like they were part of it. They were part of all of them. Yeah, well, I think it'll be really cool. Like one of the things, like I know we're gonna start running out of time soon, but one of the things I wanted to start talking to you about, and I wanted to challenge you on, and I forgot last night that we could start thinking about it. I was like, yo, man, like what if we started our own RIA? Like
Yeah.
what would our tech stack look like? Like who would be our custodian? And maybe that's something we want to start thinking about. Like for our next call. But because something I said, what was it? We did that last night. Was our podcast. But is you could have two firms using the exact same tech stack, but like operate like totally differently. So,
Yeah.
I think it really that would be something cool to talk about. And I was talking to an advisor earlier that made me think about it. Where I'm like, what do you, wasn't sure about their tech stack. I'm like, tell me, who's your custodian? Like, do you do financial planning? Do you do performance? Are you interested in the client portal? No. But no, client portals are good. It's just the clients don't use them. I mean,
Yeah.
what are you going to do?
Yeah. No, but it's so funny you asked that question about tech stack. So during my time at Addepar and kind of outside of Addepar when I was doing consulting, that was one of the questions I would get across the board from anyone I would walk into the room with first time. And they would say, one, are we purchasing something that we're going to be able to use? Yes. But like you said, it's very different for each kind of office, family office, RIA, etc., what the experience looks like based on what your deliverables are going to be and what you want to get out of it. So a lot of times I've had that conversation candidly of, if I were doing this, this would be my ideal tech stack. But the funny thing is, like we said early in this episode, you have so many people that already have legacy systems that you walk into with, where regardless if they ask for your ideal tech stack or not, they're not going to take that advice because it's just too costly for them to change
Right.
over entirely. So And then the trickle down of like, hey, I'll purchase this, then do this and that. That probably works in the accounting software side where they're like, I'll just run GL out of QuickBooks, then switch to Sage or vice versa, etc. for my needs. But realistically, once the data's there in performance, you're locked in. And I love to, whether there's an unpopular opinion or not, I love to call it the man-made or fictitious moat around the business of performance, because once they have your data, it's very hard to move away. They're not doing anything that's different in their software where you're like, someone's doing this performance and this one does it better. It's more about the deliverables and maybe a little how faster one system is better than the other. But the fictitious moat they create, the false moat they create around their business is that your data is locked in. And I've always been a big proponent of democratizing the data. Just liberate it. Let the if the advisor and their client, they're doing this on top of this data, the advisor technically has rights to that data. They should be able to move it wherever they want. That's just not the business model. I'm talking about, self-custody, things like that later on.
Right.
That's where all this stuff happens, but that's definitely a future state. But realistically, I think you either have to have new features, roll out new functionality, get your clients engaged and interested in the stuff you do, or it has to be this other alternative that you do, because once you keep them locked in, there's going to be so much they're going to be disappointed about over the long term of tech's not building fast enough, clients want all this other needs. And I think that's a segue into where AI really plays a key factor in what the next generation of technology looks like in our space.
Yeah, dude, like as you're talking, I'm thinking like, and speaking as like a student of Oleg Tishkevich here, but when you think about that fictitious moat around the performance vendor, the CRM vendor, the custodian, when I started working with these larger firms, it's like, well, how do I get that data is mine? And it seemed like the solution was, and it's like every like successful advisor wants a lake house, but from a technical perspective, you need a data lake. And it's like, how can I start getting copies of the data I'm consuming every day from my performance vendor? I want a copy. I want the transaction data, rate of return. I want everything. Just give me a copy every day. Anybody updates a note, I want the note. I want what change. I want what the note looked like before the change. I want to look after. Notes shouldn't be altered, but just using that as an example, it seems like data lakes are what's going to give you, well, they're going to allow you to consume the data. And a lot of firms get excited like, oh, we can get anything into the data lake until they learn the cost of compute to get it out. But I don't, am I right in that it's if you stand up your data lake, and what a lot of these larger firms are doing, it's like, then we own that data and it'll make it easier for me to move from one vendor to the other. And man, if you're going to like lock me down into some performance solution, I am going to have somebody that I hire in the next 2 years that's just not going to like that, dude.
Yeah.
And they're going to like wake up in the middle of the night like me, and I'm going to start writing on my wall, and I'm going to figure out how we can cut that vendor out. And so I think it's better that you just start playing friendly, be open. Hey, this is what we're doing. We're doing it better than everybody else. But if you want to know how we do it, here are our APIs. Like you can, whatever you want. Like, if you want to use our stuff inside of your stuff, that's the way it should be anyway. All these big firms, they want to create their own experience. I want to take what you're doing into mine. We should probably create a whole episode about talking about headless solutions, because took me a while to understand. I'm like, do you mean like bodiless? Like, because I see the head. No, but like I know what headless means. The organization wants to create their own ecosystem that they log into and they control, and it works this way for this advisor, it works this way for that advisor, it works this way for compliance, this way for, whatever. For the CEO, each persona can have their own experience. Again, a lot of what Invent's doing, but it seems like the data lake is what will give you a lot of the freedom that these fictitious moats create.
Yeah.
So,
and I think it's fair to say that a lot of the larger firms have the resources to do it. They have the technology team to stand up this data lake, to run it. Where some of these don't want to or can't, there's solutions out there, right, that exist in the market. However, for some of the smaller RIAs, this was something I mentioned in the first episode around AI specifically. Some of the smaller RIAs just don't want to touch it because it's so pricey or it's so resource heavy, etc. And once it's there, they're like, what do I do with it? I met with a firm who had a data lake they had set up, but they were still logging into different kind of resources to do all their deliverables and everything. And they said to me, like, where do I go from here? I have the data, I'm sitting on it, but like, what do I really do on there? And that's where I saw the market kind of shift to. That's why it's funny you mentioned the headless solutions. With Arca, what we did with Event was literally just put it as a micro app on top of the data sitting in Event. For a data lake, a larger institution who wants to do this, same exact thing. The operations can work like that. And when I started building the architecture and the image of what I saw the flow of data look like, I modularized everything out in Arca. So we do have a user interface. We have a user experience that an advisor who's small enough, who just needs that out of the box.
I've seen it.
Yeah, you logged in, you've played with it. But then for the larger ones who have said, wait, I already have a place that my advisors are in, or I already know what this experience needs to look like. And for regulation purposes, whatever, Unity, I already have a setup. Where can you guys help us? Well, we have a security master that's AI native and enabled to look through across and merge all these securities that might be duplicates and make sure everything's getting captured and the data is coming in correctly. We have core script that will process your PDF documents and things like that, whether it's trusts, proposal docs, things that you need to put together that you're aggregating into your database for CRM. We have the AI that could sit across all of your systems and bring insights, analytics into it. The three biggest features we're releasing in the next couple of weeks is going to be discovery, the ability to integrate domain knowledge, and to do tasks and workflows automatically. So you can say, like you said, the example at iPipeline, open up an account with this, advisor or something like that, or this custodian. As long as we have the details within the domain knowledge of how to do that, we can ask him, kind of fill out the data and say, here's what I need to do the rest of the way to get it to the finish line. So I think those are the kind of things that enable that future state for an RIA, for an institution, for someone to be really successful in the space, to break free of those fictitious kind of moats built around their data. But again, there's a big sacrifice that you got to take, which is it is resource heavy, it is cost heavy, just data costs just to storage it. Some places, if you're not using it, how worthwhile is it for you to do it?
It's true. But I also want to point out that looking at with firms who got acquired, like they're more valuable when they own their own data lake. Like that is a firm asset that like nobody thinks about. I don't even know if I've ever said that. But it's something to consider when they say, "Oh, where's your data?" It's not like, "Oh, it's a Redtail and Orion," and it's we have it in our Azure data lake or whatever. So it does kind of it certainly creates value.
Well, think about it this way too. There's a couple, just speaking on that, there's a couple of different ways it creates value. One, it's a firm asset. Two, a lot of aggregators are going after these businesses and acquiring kind of the middle market RIAs. Imagine you have that data sitting there and it's like, I'm sitting on top of this data. I'm seeing everything on my clients. So there are opportunities that you can look at, kind of use for purposes of new funds, instruments you want to sell to your clients, etc. So any middle market private equity backed aggregator that comes in and says, hey, I'm looking at these firms, suddenly they're more valuable because the valuation just goes up with what they're sitting on, the resources they have. And then in turn, that firm that's doing the acquiring, if they can plug into that data and get masked version of that data and see what's going on in the businesses across the board, now they're able to literally have a dashboard of, hey, I own 100 firms or minority stake in each. This is what it looks like and how efficient we're running. It doesn't need to be details all the way down to the T, like account numbers and names of the clients, but I have a feel for the business I'm in. I have a pulse for the business that I'm operating across all my advisors. And I think it becomes very attractive at that point.
Right. No, without a doubt, it definitely becomes, I mean, it's the analytics that it's analytics, almost like a 2024 word, but still carrying over into 2025. But those are the analytics that like everybody's looking for. And the cool thing about Arca is that when it is that overlay, you can just ask for analytics that you were otherwise like reports. Like it's happening so fast, it's crazy. But yeah, because I remember just like 5 years ago, telling advisors like they couldn't run certain reports like in my CRM. It's like, I don't know why. I'd have to like talk with my engineers. Like, I don't know why that field isn't available. I'll ask them, and then I'd ask them, and then they'd point me like to the door. I'm like, no new reports.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I think there's a lot in that space where, like you said, AI helps because you just ask it. It has access to the data, suddenly knows what you're looking for in that data. But along with AI, I think, we touched up on this a little in the first episode, but there was some news in RIA Biz that you threw my way, and then I was going through it, and I saw too, Schwab's trying to get into the crypto game. We were talking about
I do, but before we get there, I want to say something that it came to my mind while we were just talking, and we think about, and this is not happening today. This is I'm talking about the future of wealth and insurance. On the wealth side, we know a lot of details about our clients. We know all their details. We're their advisors, and we tell them what to do with their money. And then on the insurance side, we have products that are suitable, and we have there's so much invested in so many resources around the concept of suitability. I can't tell somebody who's about to die a 20-year annuity. It's things have got to be, regulated. And so I think that imagine if AI could be given what we know about these clients in Salesforce and given what the insurance space knows about its products, what are the most suitable investments that we are not including in discussions with the client? Boom, dude. What a prompt. Probably take a while to churn out that answer, but it would be nice.
Well, that's one of the things that you can probably solve in ARCA with the discovery part of it that I'm talking about, because as long as you have sources of data of here's the type of clients that need to fit this, or here's the criteria for this investment, cross-reference it with the CRM as long as that data is there. So anyone I've talked to where they say, what can I do with this? I always say, look, the biggest caveat to making AI work well for you is, do you have access to that data? If AI has access to data, whether it's compensation data, whether it's CRM data, whether it's investment criteria, things like that, you'll make it work. The AI is smart enough to learn what you're looking for. If it doesn't have access to that data, you've blocked out a factor of data for it to use as dependencies and determination for something. It's going to come up with piss poor answers, and then you're going to blame the AI for it. And I think that's where a lot of the misinformation really exists, where someone is quick to say, hey, I asked it this question and I didn't get the right answer. Well, if you asked it a question and the data wasn't there, it's not going to give you that answer, especially for the general AI systems and the LLMs that are sitting out there. They have this tendency to try to please the user, to try to give you an answer, even if it doesn't know. So what it does is the hallucinations start popping out, where any question you provide it, it's going to come up with some imaginative, creative answer, which is probably not true. And then it's going to say, hey, did I do it? Right. And you're just going to walk away and say, this thing was an idiot. I'm not going to use it again.
That's why brings us to problem number two. In our industry, we talk about the biggest problems. Number two is the curated data, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be clean.
Exactly.
Always talk about clean data. How much time goes into cleaning that data? iPipeline, we use the word curated data. It is perfect. So that's and I think that's what you're saying. That's what you need. So if you have both of those things, it's very easy to bring them together to say that this is the suitability between these two data sets.
It takes a village to run something like that, right? And that's where the real resource and cost constraints come when you own your own data. You take it from Goldman, you take it from Fidelity, you take it from this. Why do you have 5 different apples showing up in your data lake? It's hey, this should be all merged into one. So now you need a security master to match it and all this. So it becomes very cost
prohibitive.
Prohibitive for anyone who's looking to get into that space.
Speaking of village, you have the Invent Village coming up at T3. Exactly. Don't want to forget to say about that. But I know I took you on kind of a side route there, because you were starting to talk about Schwab's crypto guy. Yeah. So don't want to go too bonkers and make it a crypto podcast, but what we were talking about last night, right? But was just kind of how easy it is. The idea of if I really break it down, if every client, I feel like every advisor should give every client a fireproof safe. You should have this thing, and inside of it should be the stuff you need if your house burns down.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, you're in LA.
Yeah.
So how many people lost, not to go crypto bonkers again, how many people lost, I don't know how many people, but people had crypto on drives that melted. I feel like it had to, hopefully they were in fireproof safes, but crypto gets lost because it's not protected. Things are harder to find when people die because it's not in an organized place. So if you have this safe, the client feels better. God, man, you gave him the safe that you got for like $150 at Staples. Oh, that's cool. But then you get into so that's agency, man. That's self-custody. Like I can walk around with this thing and it's mine. And when we were talking about the Phantom wallet, Phantom is an application that connects to your Coinbase wallet, and it allows you to move crypto into weird little crypto universes so you can trade it and try to make more money. But when you get into that, you realize how easy it is to move money around. And that's what every generation younger than like 30 is copying and pasting money. And imagine if they had to explain to them the difference between an ACH and a wire and like why one takes longer than the other. Like the wires don't even work. Yeah. Like they don't work. So it's like, you've got to be tuned into. So when we, when we talk about crypto is somewhat rebellious to the wealth management space, because it's like, that's where people are like, I don't have to figure out how to play your securities game, man. I'm just going to figure it out. And the weird thing is they're a lot like each other. One's way more regulated than the other. And that'll probably change a little bit for the better for crypto. But the idea of empowering a client with that fireproof safe, thinking about the younger generation and what they think about self-custody and a wallet that's on my phone that, I should have a key pass and a fireproof safe. Like we can keep going. But I think it's so important that Schwab's moving in that direction, because that younger generation, like they've got to have a grasp on what it looks like to move money around, what it means to talk about, tokenization of a security. Like, does that mean that we can trade it 24/7? Like, I have no idea. I don't even.
I think that was one of the reasons. Yeah. So one of the things that's going to happen is they're going to enable 24/7 trading. I'm sure it's going to depend on certain assets that come on live, and over time, maybe ETFs and things like that. But the real world asset tokenization thing is such a big topic as well. And I think, we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago with BlackRock, leading the way. They talk about it all the time. We know what that means for a lot of these institutions. I think Schwab going into it is very interesting, and it's not kind of surprising, because it's probably coming from a lot of their clients and advisors asking for ways to probably custody this stuff. And I have a client who has it and they want to report it. Where do I put it? Or I have a client who wants a wallet. Do you want me to just go and build one on Coinbase for them? Because
I know, yeah. This younger generation is figuring out how quickly it is. Yeah. If they see something online in crypto that they want, let's just say Bitcoin, I can get it fast. I see a security selling on like the stock market that I want, like forget about it. Like, I'm talking about how the younger generation feels. It's like, what do I got to do? Do I got to set up a Fidelity account? Like, what do I do? Like, I'm not bashing on Fidelity or any custodians, but man, you make it hard. Like, it's not just maybe it is. I don't know, but like, and if it is, you need to better do it. You need to do a better job of messaging. Like, if you're making it easier for me, but it still seems so impossible to me that like I'm still moving money into non-traditional accounts, but so I think that's why you got like Larry Fink and BlackRock, like really thinking about tokenization. And even when you and I were talking a couple weeks ago, people were like, well, what an AI and model portfolios? It's like, well, I see what you're saying, but if it's 24/7 and AI can listen, like AI doesn't get sleepy. And it's just like, if there's news and all of a sudden, like you need the position and you've got a client that's like, you didn't know about like that. Like, dude, I talked to you about it yesterday. Like, you better put an AI listener out there for that. You know what I mean? Like, just to listen for anything that might be happening across that no human is capable of like scanning for that kind of news. And they'll give you a little alert, a little yellow sticky. So I wake up in the morning, I'm like, oh, snap. Like, oh, yeah, Arca just told me that I had to get that thing. Like, that's what AI is going to be doing, So in a figuratively, but maybe exactly like that.
Maybe practically too.
Yeah. Maybe there'll be a robot that'll come and just know, like, I'm just like a yellow sticky guy,
puts it on your head and walks away.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think it's going to be interesting. I remember early on, like Anchorage was one of the banks. They had a charter and they were able to do crypto, and you would still require this iPhone, and it was basically the ledger and all this stuff, and they had all the security built in because it's so easy to take stuff out if someone's pass and all that, and the recovery phrases. But yeah, I'm curious to see where it goes. I mean, it's still early on. A lot of people are making noise around it. Schwab getting into it. It's a great sign just generally for the industry. But like you said, I think with the Trump administration coming in, a lot of the people talking about crypto, and he wants to be America first on crypto. There's going to be a lot of interesting stuff that we see, I think, over the next couple of months, whether it's David Sachs doing a Bitcoin reserve or a crypto reserve, just generally including other cryptocurrencies, which I think it'll be the latter. It just, why wouldn't you diversify everywhere else? Why wouldn't you do it there? But I think that's just going to be the nature of how this kind of progresses as a country for us. And we've been behind, surprisingly, in crypto for a couple of years now with the prior administration, unfortunately. But I'm looking forward to seeing what it all kind of leads up to. I think there's something that it's slowly leading up to, but we won't get into conspiracy theories too much.
Yeah, nobody has any clue. People thought they had an idea in the last. I mean, we just are continuing to be reminded that we have no idea what's going on. But I think it's important. If you had time to watch the Super Bowl this past weekend, or we're heading into a weekend. If you're an advisor with an extra $20 to $100 to open up a Coinbase account, get it over to Sol in a Phantom wallet, PHANTOM, and ON, Phantom, yes, M. But learn how to move money around and buy some Bitcoin, buy some Ethereum, buy a meme coin for $5 and lose it all. Just see how these kids, your prospective clients, are how fast their expectations are. They and you might wonder, man, my kids, everybody wants things so fast. It's because everything is very fast now. Yeah. And a lot of these legacy systems, which are going to be around here for a while, have just got to start implementing these faster solutions. So, that Schwab piece was cool to see. RIA Biz, what a resource, coming out with always some good banger articles. But I read that, I think it was this morning or last night. I can't remember. It's been a long week, long year, right? I can't even believe it's still the new year. But it's always good to catch up with you and, talk about this stuff. I'm glad we could get this in.
Yeah, no, I'm glad we could do it as well. But thanks for your time, George. I think, we kind of went through a bunch of stuff and look forward to doing more of it. I mean, we already talked nonstop about it anyway. Might as well get folks on our with us for the journey. So we'll go ahead and sign out now and see what we can.
Yeah, it's good. We'll do it again soon. Haik and I text each other, and it's there's 5 things we didn't talk about that it's eating me up, and we need to talk about it. So it's we're here to provide as much free conversation as we can to help you make decisions and survive in the wealth management space. It's savage, and
I'm sure once we post
it
wherever we're going to post it, we're going to get someone saying oh, these guys are telling me to go buy Sol and this, and then it'll be fun. But we can we can kind of make some noise that way. But
it's interesting. As we were leading up to this podcast, I'll jump in a conversation on LinkedIn. I think I was saying this yesterday. It gets my blood boiling. I get all worked up and nervous, and I'm doing these things, and I'm I just need to start saying what I had to say in a podcast so I can provide context, and people know I'm not just trying to make some snarky comment on LinkedIn, and we don't even know each other. I'm really just trying to provide value for free.
Why does George just snip the part that you said to buy Sol, and we're just gonna put that on LinkedIn and just make it like a crypto pump?
What a psycho crypto,
Guidotti coin. Go buy the Guidotti coin.
Yeah, maybe I'll pump out some G squared Guidotti coin on Pump.fun tonight. Yeah. That's a legitimate meme coin website. I'm not making that up, but anyway, Haik, it's always good to see you, man, and hear what's up with Arca. Let's talk again soon, man, and hopefully within the next couple of days or next week.
Sounds good. Let's do it, George. Talk to you
soon,
dude.
brother. See you. All right, man.